All right, welcome everyone to another deep dive. Today we're exploring this concept called Servicialization.
Servicialization.
Yeah, it's a mouthful, right? It was developed by this guy, Paul G. Huppertz.
Okay.
And, you know, you might not have heard that specific term before,
Uh,
but the idea behind it is something you've definitely seen happening all over.
right.
Businesses are shifting, more and more towards offering services and solutions, not just selling products.
Yeah, totally.
And Huppertz gives us this really interesting framework for understanding how to make that shift effectively.
I think a lot of people are going to be interested in this. I mean, it's something that you see everywhere.
Yeah.
Just think about it. How many services are you subscribed to right now?
Oh, tons.
Exactly. And Huppertz gives us this framework,
Yeah.
a way to think about how businesses can actually be successful with this.
Yeah. And how to do it strategically, not just kind of like,
Yeah.
oh, let's
Absolutely.
jump on the service bandwagon.
I know.
So in this deep dive, we really want to unpack these core concepts that Huppertz talks about.
Okay.
We've got business to service alignment, that's B2S.
Hmm.
We've got service to system alignment, that's S2S, and then system to technology alignment.
S2T.
Yeah, so that's a lot of acronyms,
Yeah.
but we're going to break them down.
Sounds good.
And really what we want to get to is like, why should you even care about this?
Right.
Whether you're leading a company or you're just, working in one or just trying to understand how today's economy works.
Yeah. Sure.
This is important stuff.
Yeah.
And a big part of Huppertz's thinking is how he actually defines what a service is.
Okay. Yeah.
He says it's a bundle of once consumable and fleeting benefits.
Interesting.
So that's pretty different from how we normally think about a product, right?
Yeah, usually you think about something tangible,
Yeah.
something that lasts.
I buy it and you own it.
Right, exactly.
But he's really saying delivering a service is a totally different game than manufacturing a product.
It is, yeah.
So let's think about that for a second. This idea of fleeting benefits.
Mm.
It's not like buying a car that you keep for years, right?
Right,
The service, you're getting the value right when you use it.
like getting a haircut.
Exactly.
Right.
Or using a ride-sharing app or something.
Yeah, the benefit is right there in the moment.
Right. And then it's gone. It's consumed.
Yeah,
So that changes how businesses need to think about everything,
definitely. Yeah.
how they design those services, how they deliver them. It's a whole different ballgame.
And it's interesting because what Huppertz wants to do with this whole idea of Servicialization
Yeah.
is to make service delivery standardized,
Okay.
rationalized, automated, and ultimately optimized.
So it's like taking those fleeting benefits and figuring out how to deliver them in a really consistent, efficient way.
Exactly.
And he says that you need a clear, consistent language for talking about services.
Yeah, everybody needs to be on the same page.
Yeah, across the whole organization, which is why he comes up with all these very specific terms.
Oh, yeah, he's got a whole vocabulary, doesn't he?
He does. Like Servicionsbereitschaft, which basically means being ready to provide the service.
Okay, so that's like making sure you have all your ducks in a row.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Having the resources lined up, the people ready to go.
So you can meet the demand.
Yeah, so you
And
can meet the demand and
Wow.
not have customers waiting around frustrated.
Right, makes sense.
And then there's Servictionskapazität, which is all about having enough capacity to deliver the service.
Like a call center that gets slammed during peak hours.
Yeah, if they don't have enough Servictionskapazität, you're going to have long wait times.
Yeah, and unhappy customers.
For sure.
And then there's, oh, this one's kind of fun, the Uno Actu Princip. The what? Uno Actu Princip. It sounds very fancy, but it basically means making the service experience seamless for the customer.
Like one smooth interaction.
Yeah, one and done.
Okay, I get it.
And then he's got the service contribution hierarchy, the service script, the servuctions model, a lot of terms to keep track of.
There are, but they all get at this idea of like the nuts and bolts of how you actually deliver services well.
Yeah, it's not just about having a good idea, it's about the execution.
Exactly. And that's a key part of Huppertz's whole approach.
He's very focused on the practicalities.
Okay, so let's get into the first alignment he talks about. Business to service, B2S.
All right, B2S.
He says this is where it all begins.
Like the foundation.
Exactly. The business strategy isn't just some document that sits on a shelf.
Right.
It's the bedrock for figuring out what services a company should even be offering.
It makes sense.
So how do you go from that strategy to the actual services?
Well, Huppertz really emphasizes that the services a company offers shouldn't be random, right?
Right.
They have to flow directly from the company's core value proposition.
Okay.
What are you all about as a business?
Hmm?
And even more importantly, the needs of your customer.
Yeah, the actual people who are going to be using these services.
Exactly. It's about making sure your services are actually helping you achieve your business goals
Right.
and providing real value to the folks using them.
And so to make sure you're really on target with those services, Hubbard says you need to define 3 things
3 things.
for every service type.
Okay, let's hear them.
First,
Hmm.
who is the service consumer? So who's actually going to be using the service?
Right, makes sense.
Second, what is the service object? So what is the service actually, maintaining or changing?
So, like, if it's IP support, is the object a specific software program?
Yeah, exactly. Or is it a network or is it a whole system?
Okay, I see.
And then third, what's the service-specific benefit?
What does the customer actually get out of this?
Yes, what's the outcome?
Yeah, that's key.
So if a company isn't defining these 3 things for every service they offer,
Oh, that could be a problem.
it could be a big problem.
Yeah, you risk offering services that people don't really need
Exactly.
or that don't help your business.
Yeah, it's like you're wasting resources, you're confusing customers.
You're not really achieving anything.
Right. It's like shooting arrows in the dark.
Yeah, you need a target.
You need a target. So instead of just saying, we offer support services,
Which is pretty vague.
very vague, you need to say, we offer support for this specific software to these types of customers, and the benefit they get is faster problem resolution.
Oh, so that's clear.
Right. It's all about being specific and really understanding what you're offering and why.
And Huppertz really hammers this home.
He does. And speaking of customer needs,
Yeah.
he talks a lot about understanding what customers expect from your services.
What are their desired outcomes?
Exactly.
But customers don't always know what they want,
That's true.
or at least they don't always express it clearly.
Right. So how do you figure out what those underlying needs are?
Well, Huppertz says you have to really get to know your customers
Right.
through market research, feedback mechanisms, really listening to them.
Like actually talking to them,
Yeah, having conversations.
not just sending out surveys.
Right, because sometimes what they say they want
Yeah.
isn't really what they need.
Yeah. It's like the famous Henry Ford quote.
Oh, yeah. If I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses.
Exactly. So you have to dig deeper, understand the problem they're really trying to solve.
And then you can design services that truly meet their needs
Okay, so we've established what services a business should offer.
based on their strategy and customer needs.
Right. But how do you ensure that those services are delivered well?
Ah, good question.
Because it's one thing to say, we offer this great service.
Right.
But it's another to actually deliver it consistently and to a high standard.
Absolutely.
And this is where Huppertz introduces these 12 standard service attributes, which he calls qualifiers.
Qualifiers, okay.
Yeah, sounds a little technical.
It does.
But think of them as a way to define the quality of service delivery.
From the business's perspective.
Right. So it's about taking those broad business goals
Yeah.
and turning them into very specific, measurable criteria for how your services should be delivered.
So it's not just like, we want great customer service.
Yeah, that's way too vague.
You need to break it down.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
you might say, okay, great customer service means answering the phone within 2 minutes,
Okay.
resolving 90% of issues on the first call,
I like it.
and ensuring that our staff uses empathetic language.
So you're getting really specific.
Yeah, so you're moving from this kind of fuzzy aspiration
Yeah,
to a set of measurable standards.
that makes a lot of sense.
And those standards are what you use to actually measure how well you're delivering those services.
So it's all about accountability.
It is. And it ensures that your services are not just aligned with the business strategy,
In terms of what they are.
but also in terms of how well they're being delivered.
The quality aspect.
Exactly.
Which is essential for making sure your services are actually valuable.
Now, it's worth noting that this whole idea of aligning your business goals with your operations
Yeah.
isn't exactly new, right?
It's been around for a while.
It has. There are lots of business alignment frameworks out there.
Right, but what Huppertz is doing is applying it specifically to services
Yeah, he's giving us a very specific, detailed approach.
with tools and concepts that are really actionable.
And before we move on to the next stage,
Okay.
we need to address a common misconception.
Okay, what's that?
People often think of a service as just something you add on to a product.
Like a warranty.
Yeah, or tech support or something.
Oh, I see.
But Huppertz is very clear. that service can be a completely independent strategy.
Not just an afterthought.
Exactly.
Yep.
It's not just a supporting act.
So you're saying a company could build a whole business around services.
Absolutely. And in many cases, they already are.
It's a shift in perspective, for sure.
It is. It's about seeing service as a primary way to create value.
Not just something you tack on at the end,
Okay, so we've got the business strategy.
which defines the services.
Right, now let's move on to service to system alignment, or S2S.
All right, S2S.
So you've defined your service types. Now you need to translate those into actual processes.
Okay, how do you do that?
Well, Huppertz gives us this framework called the Servicialization model.
Servicialization model, another one for the glossary.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But it's actually pretty straightforward.
Okay.
It's basically a way of understanding how all different parts of a service work together.
The roles, the resources, the interactions.
Exactly. It's like a blueprint for how the service gets delivered.
Okay, so where does the system come in?
Well, the systematization of those processes happens within what Huppertz calls the Servicialization,
Which is,
basically the environment where the service is actually delivered.
okay, so like a physical location.
It could be, or it could be digital, or a combination of both.
Right, depending on the service.
Exactly. And within this environment, Huppertz says the key is to standardize how you deliver the service.
So everyone's doing it the same way.
Yeah, consistent, repeatable processes.
That makes sense.
And this is where those concepts of the service script and the service contribution hierarchy come in.
Remind me what those are again.
Okay, so the service script is like a step-by-step guide.
For delivering the service.
Exactly. It lays out all the actions that need to happen.
In the right order.
Right, to get the desired outcome.
Okay, I'm following.
And then the service contribution hierarchy breaks down all the different contributions that are needed.
Contribution.
Yeah, like the resources, the information, the activities.
Oh, so it's like all the ingredients that go into making the service happen.
Exactly. And having this level of structure is really crucial for consistency and reliability.
So you're not reinventing the wheel every time.
Right, and it helps to ensure that the quality of the service stays high.
And what about automation?
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Automation is a big part of this too.
Because Huppertz talks about that, right?
He does. He says that automating tasks and workflows can really boost efficiency.
Yeah, and make things more reliable.
But, and this is important, he emphasizes that you need to have those standardized processes in place first.
Before you start automating.
Yes,
Yes.
because if you try to automate a messy, inefficient process,
What happens?
you just end up with a faster, more efficient mess.
All right, you're not really solving the underlying problem.
Exactly. So standardization is absolutely key before you even think about automation.
And those concepts we talked about earlier, Servicionsbereitschaft and Servitionskapazität,
Yeah.
they come into play here too, right?
They do. They basically determine what your system needs to be able to do.
In terms of availability and scalability.
Right. So if you need to be able to deliver a certain volume of services,
At any given time.
your systems need to be designed to handle that load.
So you need enough capacity.
Yeah, and you need to be ready to go.
No downtime.
Right, because otherwise you're going to have bottlenecks, delays, frustrated customers.
It all comes back to the customer experience.
It really does.
Yeah.
So the Servicialization model and all these related concepts, they give you this really clear framework for how to structure your service delivery.
It's about understanding who does what resources you need, and having that service script.
And not only does that make the delivery itself more consistent, it also lays the groundwork for designing the systems and technologies that support the service.
Right, because you can't just throw technology at a problem.
You can't. And that's something that Huppertz is really passionate about.
He is. He's very clear that technology should support good processes.
Not try to fix bad ones.
Which is a really important point for anyone who's thinking about implementing new technology.
Absolutely.
Don't just assume that technology is a magic bullet.
It's not. Okay, so we've gone from business goals
To structured service processes.
Right. Now let's talk about the final piece of the alignment puzzle. System to technology, or S2T.
S2T. All right, bring on the tech.
Now, this is where we focus on choosing and implementing the right technology.
To support those systems and processes.
Exactly. And Huppertz has some very strong opinions about this.
Oh, I bet he does.
He says, point blank, that IT and AI are enablers of service delivery.
They're not the driver.
Exactly. They should not be dictating the strategy.
Interesting.
And he actually warns against something he calls technology fixation.
Technology fixation.
Yeah, it's this tendency to get so excited about the latest and greatest tech
Right.
that you try to shoehorn it into your business, even if it doesn't really sit.
Like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
Exactly. And then he talks about service ignorance.
Which is?
When the IT folks don't really understand the nuances of how services are delivered.
Or what customers actually need.
Yeah, they're so focused on the technology.
That they lose sight of the bigger picture.
Right. And so what Huppertz is really saying here is
Mm-hmm.
that technology decisions should always be driven by the business strategy.
And the service delivery model.
Yes. You shouldn't let the available technology dictate what services you offer.
Or how your company operates.
It should always be the other way around.
So strategy first, then systems, then technology.
Exactly. Technology is the tool that helps you achieve your goals.
Not the other way around?
It's so easy to fall into that trap, though, right?
It is, especially with all the shiny new gadgets out there.
Yeah, but if you're not careful, you end up with a bunch of expensive tech.
That doesn't actually solve any real problems.
And it might even create new ones.
And this is where that strategic deployment of IT comes in to support the Servicialization.
And to make that Uno Actu Princip a reality.
It's seamless customer experience.
Exactly. And the right technology can really make a big difference there.
So it's not that technology is bad.
Not at all. It's about using it strategically.
In the right way, at the right time.
Now, Huppertz's work might predate the whole AI boom.
Yeah, he wasn't talking about ChatGPT.
But his principles still apply.
They do, actually.
Because AI has huge potential to make services better.
More efficient, more personalized.
And even higher quality.
Yeah, you can automate routine tasks.
Provide intelligent support to your staff.
Use data analysis to optimize everything.
But the key is
What's the key?
that AI still needs to be aligned with those overarching service and business goals.
It's a tool, not a solution in itself.
Exactly. So whether you're talking about AI or some more basic IT system,
The principle is the same.
technology follows the service delivery strategy.
It doesn't lead it.
That's a really important takeaway from Huppertz.
It is. You have to be intentional about how you use technology.
Now, given how specific this framework is,
Yeah.
it's not surprising that there are some common misunderstandings about Servicialization.
Okay, like what?
Well, one big one is thinking that going digital automatically means you're offering great service.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Huppertz is very clear that digitalization is just about changing the format of information.
It's not about the customer experience.
Exactly. So just because you've implemented some digital tools,
Doesn't mean you're actually providing good service.
you could have a really slick website,
Yeah,
but if the underlying process is broken,
it's still a broken process.
exactly. So true Servicialization goes deeper than that,
It's about customer benefit.
and a well-designed approach.
And sometimes that might not even involve a lot of technology.
That's right. Another common misconception
Okay.
is this idea that technology should be driving the bus.
Instead of technology following the strategy.
Yeah, it's the other way around.
Which is, a bit backwards.
It is.
Yeah.
And Huppertz cautions against IT departments defining services based on what their systems can do.
So, we have this cool new software, let's build a service around it.
Exactly. It should be the other way around.
We need to solve this customer problem. What technology can help us do that?
Right. The business needs and the customer needs should always come first.
Technology is there to support that.
And then the final mistake that companies often make
Okay.
is failing to recognize that services are fundamentally different from products.
We talked about that earlier with the fleeting benefits.
Yeah, and because of that difference.
You can't manage them the same way.
Right. Services are consumed in the moment,
Often involve direct interaction with the customer.
and the value is in the outcome.
Not in owning a physical thing.
So if you try to manage a service like it's a product,
You're going to run into problems.
big time. Okay, so we've covered the core principles, the common pitfalls.
Now what?
Let's talk about how to actually put this into practice.
All right, give me the best practices.
Well, there are a few key themes that come up again and again.
Okay.
First, customer orientation is absolutely essential.
Understanding your customer.
Knowing their needs, exceeding their expectations.
That's the foundation.
It is. And then you need clear strategic alignment.
Making sure your services actually support your business goals.
Right. And then you need collaboration across different teams.
Business, service delivery, IT, all working together.
No silos.
And then you need to invest in both technology and training.
Because the best tech in the world won't help if your people don't know how to use it.
Or if they don't understand the service itself.
Exactly. And finally, you need to focus on delivering real value to the customer.
Tangible outcomes.
And you need to constantly be looking for ways to improve.
Never stand still.
Now, we may not have case studies that say this company perfectly implemented Huppertz's Servicialization,
Right.
But we do have great examples of companies that have made this shift towards services.
Companies that are doing it right.
Exactly. And they're often using technology in very strategic ways.
Just like Huppertz talks about.
So, for example, think about Rolls-Royce.
The airplane engine company.
Yeah, they have this thing called power by the hour.
What's that?
They're not just selling engines anymore.
Oh.
They're selling guaranteed engine power.
So like a subscription.
Kind of. The airlines pay for the power they use.
Interesting.
And Rolls-Royce takes care of all the maintenance.
Makes sense.
Then you have Philips with their light as a service.
What? You can subscribe to light bulbs now.
Basically, you're paying for the light, not the bulb.
Wow.
And then there's Xerox with their paper print.
So you pay for the pages you print.
Exactly. Not the copier itself.
I'm seeing a pattern here.
You are. And then there's Caterpillar.
The heavy equipment company.
They're doing predictive maintenance.
So they're using data to anticipate problems.
Yeah. And they can fix things before they even break down.
That's amazing.
It is. And all of these examples,
Yeah.
they really embody those B2S, S2S, S2T principles.
How so?
Well, take Rolls-Royce, for example.
Okay.
Power by the hour is a perfect example of B2S alignment.
They're offering a service that directly addresses the airline's needs.
Exactly. And then the processes they've developed to monitor the engines to deliver that guaranteed power.
That's S2S.
Right. And then all the sensors, the data analytics, the communication systems they use.
That's S2T.
It all comes together.
So it's not just about the service itself, it's about the whole system.
And these companies have really shifted their thinking.
From selling products to selling outcome.
Exactly. So as we wrap up here,
Yeah.
I think it's pretty clear that lining your business, your services, and your technology,
It is essential,
it's not optional anymore.
especially in today's world.
And Huppertz gives us a really powerful way to think about that alignment.
His framework is very thorough.
It is. And his core principles are really important to remember.
Like what?
That your business strategy should drive your service offerings.
Not the other way around.
That your service delivery processes need to be structured and standardized.
For consistency and quality.
And that technology should enable those processes.
Not dictate them.
Exactly. And we need to avoid those common mistakes.
Like thinking that digital equals good service.
Or letting technology drive the strategy. It's about having a clear focus.
And using technology strategically.
To achieve your goals.
It's interesting, even though technology is always changing.
Yeah.
Huppertz's principles are still so relevant.
They are. Because at the end of the day...
It's about understanding the relationship between your business, your services, and your technology.
And making sure they're all working together.
Towards a common goal.
So, as a final thought for everyone today, we want you to think about your own organization.
How well aligned are you?
Yeah. Is your technology really serving your strategy?
Or is it leading the way?
Are you using technology to enable great service?
That delivers real value to your customers.
These are questions that every business needs to be asking.
And Huppertz gives us a framework to start answering them.
Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive into Servicialization.
It's been a fascinating conversation.
We hope you've learned something valuable.
And we'll see you next time.
Until then.